She stood in scrubs, scar exposed as whispers followed her through the terminal. No one saw the soldier beneath the skin. In the flames of Kabuza, she crawled through fire to save lives scarred not by shame, but by selfless courage under fire. Just as the judgment peaked, boots echoed. A five-star general stopped, eyes locked on her tattoo, and everything changed. People stepped aside now. The whispers faded, and as she walked to Gate 12, the world finally saw her for who she was. Above the clouds, with light on her scar and thanks in her hand, she was no longer invisible. She was airborne and seen. Emily Carter stood alone in the early morning light of the airport terminal, unaware that within minutes, a room full of strangers would silently judge the most painful chapter of her life. She wasn't trying to make a statement. Dressed in simple blue scrubs with her hair tied back in a messy bun, she looked like any tired nurse catching a flight after a long shift. But it wasn't the uniform that drew stares. It was the pale scar that cut down the left side of her face and the small falcon tattoo inked just above her wrist. She clutched a worn duffel bag and her boarding pass as she stepped into the security line, planning nothing more than a surprise visit to her family. It had been 8 months since she'd last seen them. 8 months of night shifts, trauma calls, and operating rooms filled with screaming, blood, and sirens. Her leave had finally been approved 7 days away from the chaos of the hospital. She needed this. But as Emily moved forward in line, she began to notice the shift in atmosphere. A young boy glanced at her and quickly looked away. His mother leaned down and whispered something just loud enough for Emily to catch. "Don't stare, honey. She probably did something bad." Emily exhaled quietly, jaw tightening. She'd heard it before. People saw the scar, the ink, the fatigue in her eyes and assumed the worst. The TSA officer barely concealed his discomfort when she stepped forward. "What happened to your face?" he asked, not cruelly, but carelessly, as if her story was some casual curiosity. Emily responded flatly, "Combat medevac mission." The man blinked, clearly unsure how to process that. "You were military?" he muttered, half skeptical, half disbelieving. The murmurs behind her grew louder. Judgment hung in the air like humidity, and all Emily could do was breathe and remember. The line moved forward, but Emily felt stuck in time, trapped between the stares of strangers and the weight of a memory she didn't invite. Every step toward the scanner made her skin itch. A man behind her muttered something about crazy vets, while a woman nearby whispered, "That scar looks self-inflicted." Their voices weren't loud, but they were sharp, sharper than shrapnel. Emily tightened her grip on the boarding pass, crumpling the edge. The falcon tattoo on her wrist was now fully exposed, catching the light. Some stared at it like it was a gang symbol, not knowing it marked her as a medic with the elite Falcon unit, the team that had been sent into the hellhole of Kabuza. The scanner loomed ahead. As she stepped forward, another TSA agent eyed her warily. "Ma'am, are you carrying any medical equipment or medications?" he asked with a tone that hinted at accusation rather than concern. Emily bit her tongue. "No," she answered calmly, but inside, a storm brewed. Her breath caught. Flash. The fire came back first, then the smoke, thick and black, then the blood, the metal groan of a collapsing vehicle. She could still feel the shattered glass beneath her palms, the heat blistering her skin. Kabuza. The valley had turned into a death trap. Emily remembered the cries of the 2 Marines trapped inside the overturned transport. One was just 17. He screamed for his mom as she crawled toward him through the flames. She dragged them both out, one by one, using her body as a shield as bullets cut the air around her. She called for a medevac over a broken comlink while fire licked at her sleeves. That was the moment her face burned. That was the moment she earned the scar that now turned heads at gate security. None of these people knew. They didn't see her when she was kneeling in blood-soaked gravel, compressing a wound with her bare hands. They just saw what was left behind: a scar, a tattoo, and a woman alone. As the scanner beeped and cleared her, another voice echoed behind her, dripping with sarcasm. "They let people like that fly?" Emily's jaw clenched again. She stepped forward without turning back, but her legs felt heavier. It wasn't just fatigue, it was being misunderstood, misjudged, reduced. A supervisor approached and stopped her before she could reach her bag. "Emily Carter?" he asked, holding her ID. "Need a word." His eyes danced between her scar and her tattoo. She met his gaze. "Is there a problem?" she asked. He hesitated. "Are you flying for medical treatment?" Emily's face remained still. "I'm a trauma nurse. I served in Kabuza, Falcon Unit." The man blinked. But before he could speak, a hush began to fall across the terminal, and from behind them, the sound of boots on tile polished, deliberate broke the tension. Something had shifted. The room was about to change. The terminal's usual buzz dulled to a low hum, like the room itself had taken a breath and held it. The sound of boots shined to a mirror finish echoed down the marble floor with calm authority, not rushed, not hesitant. Each step landed with deliberate precision. Emily noticed the shift before she saw him. People turned. Phones were lowered. Conversations stilled. The TSA supervisor holding her ID straightened instinctively. But his expression remained puzzled until the man came into view. He was tall, with the kind of posture that could silence a room without a word. His uniform was immaculate, deep army green adorned with ribbons and medals that gleamed beneath the airport's fluorescent lights. But it wasn't the medals that held the room, it was the 5 stars above his heart. General Thomas Briggs. The name carried weight. To those who knew, it was legend. To those who didn't, his presence alone was explanation enough. Emily turned slowly, sensing the current in the air. And then their eyes met. At first, she wasn't sure he recognized her. His face was unreadable, stoic, distant. But then his gaze dropped to the tattoo on her wrist, the falcon gripping the medical caduceus. A flicker of recognition moved across his face like dawn chasing shadows. The memory found him. He changed direction and walked straight toward her. The TSA supervisor stiffened, eyes darting between the general and Emily. His voice trembled slightly. "Sir, is there?" The general raised one hand. Silence. He stopped 3 feet in front of her and studied her face, not with pity, not with confusion, but with remembrance. "Falcon Unit?" he asked quietly. Emily nodded, her voice catching in her throat. "Yes, sir." "Kabuza," he said, almost to himself. Another nod. "Yes, sir." A pause stretched between them, then, "You carried Sergeant Niels out of a burning vehicle." Emily swallowed hard, memory rising like smoke. "And Corporal Briner," she added softly. He exhaled slowly, not quite a sigh, more like honoring the weight of what wasn't said. Then he added, "You didn't wait for orders." The medevac was already on its way. "I know," she said. "You went back anyway." She said nothing. They both knew what that meant. General Briggs turned to the TSA supervisor. His tone was calm, but unshakable. "This woman is not to be questioned again. She's Falcon. She's one of ours." The supervisor's face drained of color. "Yes, sir," he stammered, stepping back. The general turned back to Emily. "We don't forget our own," he said. She hadn't realized she was holding her breath until that moment. Something inside her chest unclenched. It wasn't relief, it was something more powerful. Recognition. For the first time in years, someone had looked past the scar, past the assumptions, and seen her as she truly was. But General Briggs wasn't done. He turned not just to the officer, but to the crowd. "This woman," he said, voice steady and even, "saved 2 of my men under direct enemy fire in Kabuza. One of them had lost both legs. She shielded him with her own body while calling for extraction. No one moved. She didn't wait. She didn't flinch. She went in when others froze. Those scars," he gestured gently to her face, "they're not shameful. They're proof. Proof of courage, of sacrifice most people in this room will never comprehend." Around them, people began to look away in discomfort, not at her, but at themselves. The couple who had whispered earlier clutched their bags and stared at the floor. A teenage boy who had earlier snickered now avoided her gaze entirely. But others looked at her differently. Reverently. One man, young, buzz-cut, standing by the window, raised his hand slowly in a salute. Emily returned the nod. Her fingers trembled slightly. The general faced her again, his expression softening. "I'll see you at the gate," he said, giving her a slow, respectful nod. Then he turned and walked away. But no one was watching him anymore. They were watching her. And for the first time in years, Emily Carter wasn't just a woman with a scar in an airport security line. She was a hero. As General Briggs disappeared down the terminal, a new kind of silence settled over the crowd, not stunned, not embarrassed, but humbled. The stares that had once been sharp and curious now carried something else entirely: respect. Emily stood motionless, her ID still in hand, the falcon tattoo visible on her wrist like a silent flag. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The room was already speaking for her. The TSA officer who had asked her what happened to her face stepped forward, shoulders stiff. His voice was quieter now. "Ma'am, I apologize. I didn't know." Emily gave a small nod. She wasn't angry. Not anymore. The apology couldn't erase what had been said, but it softened the sting. It meant something. Across the terminal, a woman dabbed at the corner of her eye with a tissue. Another passenger mouthed, "Thank you." A teenage boy, who had earlier grinned while holding up his phone, now stood awkwardly near a support column, phone tucked away, face flushed with shame. When she met his eyes, he raised a tentative hand in a small wave, and she returned it not with a smile, but with something quieter, deeper: forgiveness. Then came the final gesture. A young flight attendant, tablet in hand, approached her slowly. "Miss Carter?" she asked. Emily turned, still stunned by the shift around her. "We'd like to offer you an upgrade to first class," the woman said softly, almost like a confession. "Courtesy of the airline, no cost, just respect." For a moment, Emily hesitated. Her instinct was to decline, but then she saw the sincerity in the attendant's eyes, and she simply nodded. The woman handed her a new boarding pass, then gave her a knowing smile before walking away. The crowd parted as Emily walked to her gate. This time, no one whispered. No one looked away. She passed the same people who had mocked her only moments before, and now they stepped aside with quiet reverence. An older man in a Vietnam veteran's cap gave her a slow nod. A mother holding a toddler paused, smiled, and mouthed, "Thank you." Emily's fingers rested gently on the falcon tattoo as she reached gate 12. She wasn't invisible anymore. Not just because of the general. Because they had finally seen her. Emily sat quietly by the window in first class, her duffel tucked at her feet, the upgraded boarding pass resting lightly in her lap like an unexpected medal. The hum of the engines rose beneath her, smooth and steady, and as the plane began to taxi, she let her head fall gently back against the seat. Sunlight streamed through the oval window, catching the faint shimmer of her scars, no longer harsh, no longer hiding. Her eyes drifted to the falcon tattoo on her wrist. It looked smaller now, but heavier with meaning. She had carried lives in these hands. She had walked through fire, both literal and not, and somehow come out the other side burned, yes, but whole. As the wheels left the ground and the city shrank below her, a folded note slipped into her hand from a flight attendant. "Thank you for your service." No name, no flourish, just the truth. Emily glanced down the aisle. The teenager from the terminal gave her a soft, apologetic wave. She returned a nod. The plane climbed higher, slicing through clouds that looked like stretched cotton. And for the first time in years, Emily felt light, not because the scar had vanished, but because the weight of being unseen had finally lifted. People had judged her. Then they had seen her. But more importantly, now she saw herself. Not as broken, not as forgotten, but as someone who went in alone and came out remembered.